seconds?
I think because May started.
Sorry.
No worries. We don't have a chair, so I can be chair this week. That's right with other people. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the cert-manager developer meeting. It is the 11th of August 2021. It'd help if I share my screen as well. Let me do that. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My computer is having a bit of a wobble at the moment. I think it needs a reboot. Cool. 3 things on the agenda at the moment. First of all, Ash, if I understand correctly, you're going to do a presentation. Is that right? About your Google Summer of Code work that you've been doing?
Yeah.
Cool.
Share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Looks good.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry. Yes. I was
Yeah.
nodding.
I can't see everyone, so
Sorry.
yeah, one different. All right. So as part of this project, like we wanted to test cert-manager on different cloud providers, which basically involved like installing cert-manager on those cloud providers and running the tests. So to give an like overview, it's easier to understand the project if you divide it in 3 parts, which were like creating the actual infrastructure where we would install cert-manager, and then making these existing tests compatible, because like out of the box they just won't run with any other infrastructure except the local kind clusters. And the third step was like adding the prow job so that it can be done in the CI. So for creating the infrastructure, we chose like Terraform, and so that we could have it as a code, like have it documented and easier to change, and plus we can use it much more easily in the CI. And we like chose EKS and installed cert-manager on top of that. And then we also had like remote state. This was done to like sort of so if the CI job is running and anyone creates the Terraform infrastructure, some other person who has the credentials can destroy the infrastructure also without like them being on the same computer. And I'll like show some of the code. And Nginx ingress was also installed, and then we basically exposed the load balancers hostname. So all of this infrastructure is in this repository. If we go to AWS main.terraform, so this is the remote state I was talking about, which is basically an S3 bucket where Terraform stores all of its like history so that it can sync up. And then we installed cert-manager on our EKS cluster, which is this bit. And then we installed Nginx ingress and we created a Kubernetes service, because what we wanted to do was expose the load balancers hostname, which we would need to provide the tests when we are running with it. So this was the bit about creating the infrastructure. Then the next part was extending the tests, which involved adding. So like currently the tests run on Pebble, but since this is an actual cluster, we needed to use Let's Encrypt staging. So we needed to add like some additional flags, which like earlier were not present, and we were just using hard-coded values for those. And so we added the flags, made them configurable, and replaced the constant values. And some of these flags were, so these are like all the flags which we edited and stuff. So this was the Acme server URL which defaults to Pebble, which is what we use for the kind2e tests, but we provide a Let's Encrypt staging URL when we run ours. And these were like some additional flags we would need.
Ash,
apart
can I ask a question now, or would you rather me wait?
Sure, you can ask now. Yeah.
I was looking at the Terraform earlier, and I think you said you installed Nginx Ingress.
Yep.
Is it later in the presentation, or are you planning a follow-up PR or development where you use some sort of Amazon load balancer? In the
So
tests?
I think for Amazon we are not doing it, but for GCP Jake suggested that we use their internal one, and for Azure also we are using the internal one, but I'm not quite sure why Jake suggested to go with this one. But to answer your question, there's currently no plan of using some other instead of this Nginx Ingress,
Right,
but
okay.
it can be done, since we could just replace this block.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, after making the test configurable, we needed to add another feature set because all the public Acme servers do not support everything which already exists. So we created a new feature set which borrows from the existing stuff and removes the stuff which we know will not work for sure. And then the final step was making a custom Docker image which would have all the stuff we need, which is basically the AWS CLI, AWS IAM authenticator and all that stuff, and the Terraform binaries. With this image, we can use this image. We use this image to run a pre-submit job and a periodic job, and the periodic job runs once in every 2 days, and the pre-submit job can be triggered using this command. So ideally, this project is only meant for a periodic job, since it has nothing to do with the PR on which you would trigger the job. So we can remove this, but we let it be in case we want to manually run the test at some point and not wait for 2 days.
So can I do that today on any PR? I could trigger
Yep,
this.
I'll show that also.
Nice. What were the features that definitely don't work with the real Let's Encrypt?
I do not recall them by name, but if you see the feature set, these are the ones we ignore.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Long.
So those are things which do work with Pebble.
Yep.
The
but do not
simulator,
work with.
But they don't work with Let's Encrypt.
Public.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks.
And
what?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I was just quickly wanted to ask, what version of Kubernetes does it run against, or EKS? Is it just one, or is it going to run against range of Kubernetes versions?
It's only a single version.
1.17.
1.17.
Yeah.
I wonder if it would have made sense to run it against all of them, maybe but yeah, it's
completely configurable. So when we have we can just change it here, or since these variables can also be changed in line in Terraform, so we could have different jobs or a single job running. We just have to pass a value here, so that's
Cool.
not a problem.
That looks awesome.
Yep, and just the final step was the prow job, which basically clones the cert-manager code and the AWS infra code and creates the infra and basically runs the test where we pass in this is the Let's Encrypt staging URL, and this is where we provide the config which gets created by Terraform for us, the qconfig. And so like I said, the pre-submit job can be triggered, and this is where I triggered it on one of Tim's PRs which had OK to test enabled. And if you go here, it runs 14 tests right now, 2 of which fail, and Jake said that they're expected to fail because the gateway thing is not been merged yet. But other than that, the 12 things which are supposed to pass are passing. So it turns out like nothing fails when you run cert-manager with AWS.
We should have run this before we did the release. Maybe you are going to show us the periodic jobs. Maybe we've seen. Maybe you already have run the tests.
So periodic job ran yesterday evening, and so it'll be running tomorrow again.
Is it gonna be added to test grid?
I do not know, because the way I saw it was Jake told me if I go here and then it's gone, but like it there's a column for it here and you can like see the results, but I don't know how the test grid thing works, or where is it.
It's like just like an annotation on the pro job config. Probably worse to do
Could
later.
go back. I did add the default annotation, so I think this should work.
Yeah, it should work.
Yeah. But yeah, so this was it, and like there are 2 PRs like fall in the longer scope of the project, which add the infrastructure for GCP and Azure, and like I'll merge them asynchronously after the period is over. But this was mostly it.
Oh, and I'm sorry I missed it, Ash. I was looking at the test grid, but have you shown us the? Was there some example output? Was it? It was just you said there was 20 tests run and ever so many expected failures. Was
the browser output is the one. Should I link it to you? If you.
Yeah, maybe just post the link in the chat here and I'll have a look.
Yep. Posting that right now.
It looks really good though.
Thank
you. I was just interested to see all the logs of Terra. Can you see Terraform doing all its stuff as it creates the cluster? That's pretty cool.
If you go to this link, wait, I'll just share my screen so that everyone's on the same page. These are like the end outputs where Kingo reports its final stuff, but if you go above, you can see like Terraform has been successfully initialized, and then it'll.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is like apply complete as Terraform has created the resources, and like this is all it. It also gives a summary of what it's going to create in the cluster, so you can see that here.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the test fails, does it leave the cluster running for a period of time so that you have a chance to? Would you log into that cluster and have a look at the pods that are running and the logs of those pods? Or is there a way, or have you got a plan to add some like diagnostics, like collect the log files from the cluster in the event of a failure?
We did not think about that, but like now you say that, that does sound like a good addition. Currently what happens was like we delete the cluster because we do not want it running because it will cost a lot.
Yeah. We've only just enabled that feature in the kind cluster. Well, Tim there's always been the feature, but it didn't actually run when the tests failed. So that was pretty rubbish. But at the moment now, if a kind-based test fails, Prow will upload the logs from that cluster as a Prow artifact. And that will be useful in your tests too.
I think like getting the logs would be easy because we would just run like cubectl commands to get the logs, but exporting them.
You just have to output it to a file called _art in a folder called _artifacts, and then Prow will upload all of that to a Google bucket.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice solution.
Looks good though. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, this I can definitely see us using this successfully. This is neat.
Oh, something I didn't get. So it's running as a periodic job, proud job, right? And when is it running? Every day? Once every day?
Once every 2 days.
Ah, great. Thanks. So did I understand correctly that it's running on both AKS? No,
just on EKS.
on EKS, so on AWS.
Yep.
Thanks.
This is a very
Looks really good for me.
This is a really general question, but is there anything that like jumped out of you and really surprised you while you were doing this? Like anything that we should keep in mind about it, or like anything come to?
I think no, mostly it was a success because like cert-manager installed properly and the tests passed. So the initial idea was to like do it to figure out stuff which won't work, but most of this stuff worked. So that's a good sign, I guess.
Yeah, that's valuable. Yeah.
We have a bunch of workarounds in the docs for Amazon EKS. Like I'll show, like in this link, and I wondered did you have to do any of this stuff?
That was mostly for Fargate, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Ah, okay.
Fargate must use host networking, which clashes with one of our ports that we use.
Well, I thought it was for EKS in all cases.
It's to do. It looks like it's EKS plus Weave or Calico. That's the problem.
Oh. So when you use a custom CNI.
Yeah.
Like we could extend your stuff, couldn't we, Ash, to install those things?
Yep. So like I did not know Terraform before the project, and that was like one of the cool things. That was like how configurable it is in the long run. You can just do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, Terraform is nice. I think any issues I was fine with Terraform is when it comes to using like third-party providers or just like some more obscure providers. Because if they're not written properly or to how Terraform expects those functions to operate, then kind of like breaks your Terraform quite a bit and makes everything really slow and buggy and horrible. But a lot of the base ones, like I think the Helm one, it seems pretty good. And I'm sure, yeah, all the AWS providers are pretty well written.
We only use the Helm one, AWS, Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these three. So these are pretty big ones. So.
Yeah, it's certainly come a long way. Since like years ago when it was more new.
It's V1, right? Now.
Oh, did they pull the trigger?
I think so, no? HashiCorp. Terraform. Yeah.
I think 1.3 or something, right?
June the 8th.
They grow up so quickly.
Interesting. They tag their alphas. They don't do alpha 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. They do dates.
Is that probably then like kind of automated release cutting? So it's not.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Unlike us.
Where everything is handcrafted with love.
Yeah, with love. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to use the framework Ash that you wrote basically to also add tests, say for, I don't know, AKS or GCP.
So like going in the order which was in the presentation, you will just need to add the infrastructure, and I already have a PR for the GCP infrastructure and the Azure one. The Azure one we can't test because I do not have the credentials. But yeah, so you would add the PR, add infrastructure to the test info repository, and then since like the tests are already configurable now, you just have to add a proud job. And
That seems cool. It's probably worse. I don't know if you have already done it. It's probably worse to add like a little README or a note for people so they know how to like extend it.
Where
really
do I
useful.
do that though? Since like this spans multiple repositories, do I do it in the test info one or the JetStack testing one or in the main cert-manager one?
Probably add it to the cert-manager website in the contributing section, because there's stuff in there already about running end-to-end tests. So it'd be worth having a note there about these new tests, linking to your repository.
Yeah. And should I delete the pre-submit job, because that seems like that can be misused if someone like keeps triggering it or something like that?
I think it sounds useful, but I see what you're saying.
I guess that's why we have the OK to test thing, isn't it? Like if someone does start take
You could just take any
I nearly
OK
swore there. If someone starts taking liberties and doing stuff that we don't approve of, we can just ban them.
Do you know that if like there's a way to manually trigger the periodic job?
No idea.
Can't that be done? That would be the best option, but yeah.
Can we limit who can trigger pre-submits that are not triggered by default? I wonder.
I don't.
It'll be tracked. I think we have a cost tracking system, don't we? So maybe it'll if it is being abused, then it'll flag up on the JetStack Slack that the costs are going.
That won't happen because right now I think Jake was trying to get me some official credentials from JetStack specifically for this project, but he wasn't able to, and I am just using the credentials which I personally was provided by Z when the project started, and in the long run we definitely do not want to use those credentials. So
I think those a lot of the billing information is really laggy. Like I think before you notice anything, you could potentially cause a lot of damage. I think that means at least 2 days. I don't know. Even then, 2 days isn't that much time.
Today, like Urbit did suggest some fail safes, so even if like someone does trigger it after running the tests, it should delete the cluster. So the only thing that can be spammed is creating, deleting.
Yeah, exactly. So you're only costing like one cluster for that amount of time, right? Because they're not they don't happen concurrently. They do happen concurrently. So if I trigger a job on one PR and then another job on another PR, do they run at the same time or are they queued?
I do not know how
there is concurrency setting on the Pro job itself. I don't know if you set that.
What I know is that like since we are using a remote Terraform backend, so if the cluster already exists, then it won't recreate another one and it'll use the existing one. And if one job deletes the cluster, then the other won't have access to it. So basically, you would never have more than one cluster at a time.
I am seeing what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So I guess then it would make sense to set the concurrency to 1 just to know that there aren't 2 that are simultaneously triggering, targeting the same cluster somehow.
How big a cluster is it? I mean, is it a multi-node cluster, and how much does it cost to run one of these test runs?
I do not know, but the max nodes that it can use is 3, and it depends on the load.
Right.
But they are like the cheapest nodes, so I do not know the cost of that.
Pence. Or cents.
What's the name? What's the Amazon equivalent of preemptible nodes? It's got a funny name.
Spot.
Spot
Yeah.
instances. Oh yeah. Well, I think that's great. Oh, should we conclude that part of the meeting?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah, again, thank you very much. That's really useful stuff. Share my screen again. Yeah, the next thing was the policy approver thing. I think I mentioned this the other day. So I want to change this one, this field here. So for context, policy approver is a operator which can approve or deny snippet requests based on these snippet request policy CRDs. So the idea being is that you'd have some kind of setup where you define a bunch of these policies, the same sort of idea that you'd set up network policies or that kind of thing. And then you use RBAC to bind policy to users in your cluster. And this controller will then approve or deny requests based on what the requesting user is bound to. So you can kind of define who can request what, and yeah, all of this is based on like fields inside the snippet request resource that are kind of abstracted away into like a human readable format. So I can do like allowed URIs, allowed IP SANs, yada yada. The way policy approval works today, and it's kind of pre-alpha state, is that much like allowed common name or allowed subject, allowed issuer is treated as the kind of as a similar behaving field. So allowed issuer will gate what issuers you're allowed to reference. This is fine, except it works with the assumption that the policy approver is the only approver running the cluster, and it's kind of globally responsible for approving or denying requests. So my suggestion is that we changed this allowed approver to, what did I say on the docs? Managed issuer refs. We can probably come up with a better name. So yeah, change allowed issuer to like issuer reference selector or something. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, the idea being is that you'd add another dimension to how these certificate request policies are applied to certificate requests. And the motivation here is that I want to run multiple approvers inside my cluster. And if I try to run another approver along policy approver, then they are going to fight with each other, or there's going to be a race between the two. And that isn't ideal. So if we changed allowed issuer to issuer ref selector, issuer selector, that kind of thing, it means that I can scope what my policy approver is going to watch, and it doesn't interfere with other policies. So that's the motivation and the benefit. The kind of why I think this is reasonable, and it won't have any, or there isn't any kind of security kind of downsides to doing this, is that it kind of fails closed. So today, if you run policy approver and you've got some policies running inside your cluster, and you try to make a certificate request that doesn't match any of the policies, then it gets denied by default. I think that's toggerable. Yes, that's right. It doesn't get approved. It gets denied. But if we have this kind of selector, then it neither gets approved or denied. So it's kind of the same kind of limbo state, which I think is like a kind of an acceptable kind of state to move to. Does anyone have any thoughts Did what I said make any sense?
I think so. I just haven't used any of the policy stuff yet, Josh. So will it allow me to set a policy which says this person may use the sample external issuer on a certificate?
Yes, and that's what I want to change.
Let's
have a
gist
running.
of it.
Yeah, let's get a running or a real example. That's more useful. Okay. Cool. So I have a policy here, for example, that's for Istio CSR serving. I've given it allowed DNS names. I've given it allowed usages, and I've given it an allowed issuer. So pretend all that doesn't exist. This means that if an entity created a different request that didn't match this issuer, then it would always be denied. And that means that, you know, perhaps I'm creating a certificate for a different reason that's for a different issuer, then it means I can't run a second approver to approve that separately. The policy approver is like global, so they kind of tread on each other's feet. But if I change this to issuer selector, then it means that this policy manifest is only going to operate when it's referencing this issuer. Of course, we can use like wildcards here or like whatever. So like you could have the old behavior. Probably need to think about what this impact is going to look like. Something like that, I guess, the long-winded way. Yes, you'd have something like that, which would select on every issuer. Yeah, or that if you want to have it more scoped.
Okay, I got it. I hadn't understood, but now I do. Yeah. So that policy might not allow me to use CAS issuer. This does as it stands, but then another policy approver might. Another policy approver running at the same time might permit my certificate request.
Yeah, exactly. My personal motivation for this is that I want to run policy approver to say I want to limit my Acme certificates and some other bits and pieces. But I also want to run a spiffy approver. So I want to run Istio plus, I don't know, a bunch of other stuff. And so I can run my spiffy approver that's just concerned with Istio certificates, and my spiffy approver is like it's a separate program, but it's going to be looking for something that looks like this, or whatever. And then I can also run my policy approver, and that's going to be concerned with some other issuer, like my Let's Encrypt or whatever issuer.
And if you have got multiple policy approvers, which what's this results? Multiple policies which select the same issuer.
Yeah.
And one of them doesn't match, and the other one does.
Yeah.
It will allow, or will it deny?
Yeah. So I talk about this a little bit in here. So the way to think about these policy CRDs is, or at least how I think about them, is that you can think about them as policy profiles. So you have a bunch of profiles that are assigned to you, say, that are bound to you with RBAC, and you're allowed to request something that fits one of those profiles. So as long as you fit one of the profiles, then you can allow the request. So it's they are what's the correct word? Like not additive, multiplicative, or I don't know. However you want to think about them.
So it's not going to deny anything. It's just going to leave it unapproved if nothing matches.
If nothing is bound and or no issuer selects on it, then it will leave it alone. If a policy is bound and an issuer and it selects on the issuer, but none of the policies match that match those criteria, then it will deny the request. Yeah, if that makes sense.
And if there is two policies, one is accepting, the other is refusing, denying, then it depends on the order, I guess.
No, it's like an or. So as
They must
long
be all of them accepting. Oh, or
no, just one. So as Alice, I'm allowed to request a certificate for my database. I'm allowed to select create a request a certificate for my Spiffy identity. So Alice will have a certificate request policy, or one of these, or policy profile, if you want to think it like that. She has a database policy profile and a Spiffy policy profile, and she can request certificates for both. Yeah, and so she would be allowed to create a certificate that looks like a DNS certificate, or another one that looks like a URI, and because each one of those policies would match. But you can't mix and match, let's say. So I can request a certificate that looks like a database certificate and a URI certificate or a Spiffy certificate. It has to be match at least exactly one. Yeah. If that makes sense. Anyone
with this before saying anything?
And how will that person? What will the feedback look like? If you accidentally create a certificate request which exactly matches one, that partially matches multiple policies, how will they know what's gone wrong?
So on the denied message, it will the error message is a map string to string, and it will say this certificate request was denied, and here are all the policies which it tried, which are match on the selector and the reasons why they failed it. So you'd have like policy -1, and it would say doesn't match the common names it requires. Policy 2 didn't match DNS plus IP or whatever. So that's how the error is output.
That sounds clear. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it kind of ties into what we were talking about the other day about those event messages being really long, but there's not a lot you can do about that.
Like the field validation messages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. So is everyone happy if I change it to that, to this kind of issuer ref selector, perhaps, or something like that?
Seems reasonable. It's alpha anyway, right? So YOLO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very quickly, the second thing I want to talk about, because we've got the 1.5 to talk about. Yeah, because I really want the cert-manager plugin to have, and I'm going to stop calling it a plugin. I really want the cert-manager CLI to have completion, because that's just good, and it makes it much more usable, and actually like a joy to use. However, the cubectl plugin or the cubectl plugin mechanism does not allow you to easily, and we couldn't really distribute software that could properly manage without a huge amount of work to inject a bunch of our own completions into that like plugin mechanism. So my feeling is, or what I want to suggest is that, well, my opinion is cubectl plugins don't really do anything. The only thing they're good for is crew, I feel, in my opinion. That's but beyond that, it is just kind of wrapping a binary. So I want to suggest that we no longer treat the cert-manager CLI as a plugin, but instead as a standalone binary, like the same as Helm or Istio-ctl. Cube Context is another one that's typically distributed as a separate kind of standalone CLI. cmctl, I would also agree and prefer to use that instead.
Istio.
I think that was the original intention, at least. I mean, that's why it's called CTL in the command directory. Anyway, yeah, I think that might be a little bit controversial because it involves changing all the language on the website and changing a bunch of the kind of strings and stuff in the example commands and stuff like that. But what are people's feeling on that? Is it worth changing all that just to have completion? In my opinion, yes, but I don't know if other people have different opinions.
So we would still publish the crew, like the CLI, we would still publish it as a crew plugin.
I think so.
Yeah, it makes sense to keep doing this.
Yeah.
But then, like, advertise it as a standalone binary, standalone
Exactly.
CLI. Now,
Exactly.
I have a question. So I tried, I'm not sure which branch I should have picked. So I tried the completion work that you have done. And
That might work.
not this one?
No, I think that might be the right
I
one.
didn't
Yeah.
manage to make it work. I wish I could, but yeah, I really wish I realized how better it is with the completion. Because I want, before the meeting, I was against it, and now I realize that it is such a quality of life improvement that maybe it is worth doing the whole change and like all the commands in the documentation using cmctl or cert-manager, whatever we like. Maybe it makes sense.
My only comment would have been, like, as long as we keep it on crew, because that's a great way for people to discover it and an easy way for them to install it. But if they want to, add a separate binary, that seems totally reasonable.
So can crew install a non-plugin binary?
Well, this is the thing. A non-plugin binary isn't even a real thing. A qctl plugin is anything you want it to be. It is literally just executing a arbitrary executable. The only thing it does, anything kind of magic that's going on, is kubectl is looking at a list of semi-well-known directories, and then crew's kind of machinery to fetch and distribute and manage a bunch of, again, well-known packet plugins on the internet.
So crew has put like another plugin I use is the operator plugin, and it's put it in .crew/bin kubectl-operator. So crew would put cmctl in .crew/bin, which isn't on my path, or maybe it is. I don't know. But I'm not actually sure how it's all set up.
I guess kubectl will search in that path as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Kubectl has, you can set some path that kubectl can search when looking for plugins. That's one other nice touch that kubectl plugins have.
Well, I
you
know,
don't have to have. Oh wait, is it in your path?
Well, I don't remember putting .crew/bin into my path. So has crew modified my bash RC or something?
No, it's when kubectl specifically will look in there as well as your path, I think.
No, but I can, bash is if I type kubectl dash and type tab, bash is suggesting kubectl operator, and I don't know how it's finding it. Oh, maybe I'll look into that.
Have you got the cert-manager plugin installed for your crew? Does that expose the same thing?
I think I put the kubectl cert-manager binary into my .local/bin directory manually.
Oh no, crew has added itself into my path.
Would we then
Surprise.
be able to use the same, basically the same binary with the completion scripts also as crew plugin, just that the completion won't work? Or will we actually
Yeah.
need to build like 2 separate binaries?
It's the
No,
same
it's-
binary.
Same thing. The only this is the thing though, is that currently all the kind of language and the usage and the examples and that kind of thing are all using the cubectl space cert-manager. I would be in favor of rewriting all of those examples and language to just be cmctl instead. To try and persuade and encourage users to use it directly.
Sounds reasonable to me.
The other thing which needs thinking about if we do go ahead with this is the release artifacts. That is like cert cubectl underscore cert-manager or something is the target name. Do we keep that and add a second one for cmctl, or do we replace it? Do we count our target artifact names as an API, and can we break it?
That is
Wait, do you
used
mean-
by crew directly. That they're there, so I don't think we can change it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we would have to have both. They could be the same binary, but
Okay, yeah, I remember having some kind of chat with James about this issue one morning long ago.
So the question is about the folder name.
The binary name, like
So if we go to the releases page.
Oh yeah, the binary name on the release page. Okay.
I'm on the wrong thing. God, my computer really is having a wobbly. So we either replace this or we duplicate what's here.
I mean we could change the crew index to point somewhere else. I don't think it has to point at a GitHub release. But if you wanted to keep this asset list clean, but equally I don't really know why we'd want to keep it clean. Like if as long as we're not hitting a space constraint or anything, just throw a bunch more binaries in there.
I think I agree. I think I don't really care. I think the only thing that I feel like I do care about is it might be confusing for new users. But is it? Don't know.
So what
Is it
would
obvious?
be the reason for keeping the old ones, the old name?
because it's not going to work with crew otherwise. Like crew
Because
expects
crew can
binary.
be configured like crew doesn't need the exact binary name. You can give it a not like cubectx cube context or something has a different, or cubeNS something. They have a different name, and on crew it becomes cubectl NS and cubectl CTX. So I would assume that there is some crew can be configured to rename the binary or something.
You have to give the binary name in the YAML specification. But if that, I guess the problem is we want two different names for the binary, right? We want one called cubectl cert-manager so we don't break people using the old way. If we want to also rename it, then the crew won't be any good for the renamed version, but I don't think we could easily have like a symlink in the tarball or anything. I don't really know how it treats those, and that seems like a minefield anyway. So
So I wonder what they are doing here then, because they're only publishing one name. But maybe they're not using this for crew.
maybe crew do some magic with it. If it didn't start with cubecode, it'll prefix it. It's worth investigating.
It does somewhat make sense, maybe, to make the GitHub releases page cleaner. There's nothing also stopping us from just chucking whatever we want in the Google Cloud bucket, right? So even if it's not listed here on the releases page, we could still have as part of the release process, just sticking it in a bucket and referencing it from there.
That's also a valid. That's what other people do. They just they put it in a bucket.
Mm-hmm. Food for thought. Anyway, I feel like we've kind of come to some kind of agreement, so we can move forward on it. But yeah, there's clearly some decisions need to be made. But
Crew, sorry,
don't have to be. Sorry, go on.
while we're still on the topic, crew creates simlinks in .crew/bin. So if you install cubecode ctx, it actually installs a symlink like that. So it doesn't need to be called cubecode. So I guess what I'm saying is we could rename the binary and then crew will add the prefix. It does symlink magic locally.
That's exactly what I was like. I couldn't.
We could totally just clean it up easily.
Cool.
I think this is a yes.
Cool. That makes me a very happy bunny, indeed.
I'll be really happy to try the completion.
I'll probably won't be this evening, but I'll open the PRs at some point. I've been playing around with it a little bit, trying to make them like split up and nice and things like that. But all the kind of wiring is mostly there, so I can open them up quite soon actually. 1.5. Does someone want to talk about 1.5?
Congratulations. And by the way, we did it on time. The day we had scheduled, we had plans, so that's great. And everything that was planned was delivered. So just wanted to say that. I want to congratulate the team. That's it.
This is comical. In the PR for the crew index update, which I made earlier, the guys just suggested that I do the release automation, even though I wrote in the original comment that we were going to set that up, and he quoted me saying that we were going to set that up. Like, I think I know, dude.
That's the person who wrote cubectl.
Yeah, he's a big in the crew scene.
Cool. I will stop the recording, I think.
Oh, we're done?
I mean, don't have to be. No.
I mean, you can stop the recording if you like.
If we should be approaching being done, if no other reason than Ash needs to go to bed.
Cool. Did everyone have a good day?
Still recording.
We're still recording. I clicked.
I think only mail can stop it, right?
No, I can do it.